Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Before we get started, I just want to thank each and every one of you for listening to us. The following is growing every week. And if you enjoy what you hear, if you enjoy the messages we put out, I'd love you to go on and give us a rating and review because it helps other people to find the podcast and to benefit as I hope you have. So if you listen it and you like it, I would love you to do me a favor and give us a rating and review. Today's episode is going to be really special. I have with us today Miriam Airington-Fisher. She's the founding partner of Airington Law, which is a women-led law firm in Virginia that specializes in immigration, criminal defense, and civil litigation. Miriam's also the author of Mom's a Lawyer, How to Start a Firm and Take Control of Your Life. And she's got some great stuff for us today. So Miriam, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Gary. Thanks so much for having me.
Miriam, tell me a little bit about your professional journey and how you got to where you are today running your firm.
Sure. Thank you. Well, my professional journey did not start off as an entrepreneur. I did not start off with the goal of owning a law firm. I really wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a trial lawyer since I was a little kid. I loved the courtroom dramas, To Kill a Mockingbird. All of that was really what drove me. And I went through law school. I worked as a legal aid attorney, as a public defender, and then moved over into private practice. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I was really doing exactly what I wanted to be doing. I was working for a great firm here in Richmond. I was working with some very, very well-known, experienced criminal defense attorneys, and I was doing really exciting stuff. I was trying cases. I was arguing cases in the Virginia Supreme Court, in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. I was handling jury trials, and I really couldn't have been happier. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do.
You were doing most of criminal law?
At that time, yeah, I was doing mostly criminal defense.
And tell me how you enjoyed it, and tell me what, if any, challenges that practice gave you.
Well, I love the area of law. Criminal defense, criminal law in general, to me is sort of the classic, TV lawyer. Handling cases, sometimes defending the innocent, but just really the classic constitutional issues. Really, really fascinating. Every day is different. Every case is different. I found trial work to be really exciting. I loved being in court. And so it was really all upside for me throughout my 20s. I was working long hours. That became a downside, but it wasn't always, because I really had a lot of energy for that earlier in my career. I wanted to get in on every case I could. I wanted to get down to the jails and meet with the clients and interview witnesses. But after a couple years of doing that, I was turning 30. I had my daughter. I had my first child. And I also went through a divorce. And all of those things happened within about 3 weeks of each other.
Big life changes all at once. Having your daughter,
oh yeah,
getting divorced. That usually
exactly.
Getting divorced is very, very stressful. And recently had my 6th grandchild, and I know for them having their child is also a huge life change. So those are 2 big changes.
It's a big one, yeah. And so that really just that sort of major event really drove home that I needed to make some changes in my career. I didn't want to leave law. I loved law then. I still love law now. I feel really fortunate to do what I love, to have clients trust me. But that pace was not sustainable. I was a single mom with a newborn. My daughter was with me 100% of the time. At the time, I didn't have any family in town.
Wow.
And
that's a lot on your plate. That's hard.
It sure was.
That's really hard.
Was. I mean, for any working parent, as you know,
Yes.
I mean, it's always a challenge. But what that meant is immediately the working 7 days a week, the interviewing witnesses, out in the evenings, going out to the crime scenes on the weekends and stuff. That was just an absolute no-go. So I had to switch it up, and I had to figure out how I could stay in the field that I loved, but have the lifestyle that I needed to balance my other responsibilities.
So how did you do that? How did you move from such an overwhelming practice of law as a criminal defense attorney, high profile, and switch to find some balance now that you were a single mom with a young child?
That's kind of where my journey shifted a little bit, and I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. And I basically, with no planning, with no business plan, with no capital, I just hung a shingle, as we say, and started a law practice because I needed the room to figure it out. I should say that the firm that I worked for was very egalitarian. I never felt like the partners felt like I couldn't work there because I was a woman or a mom or anything like that. It was just the culture of the firm and the profession in general. And I know that you're familiar with this because you speak on this issue so much. You know, the culture is work around the clock, always be accessible, hustle, hustle, hustle. So it wasn't that any one person was saying you need to do this or you can't do this. I saw that it wasn't sustainable. So I just kind of checked out of that and found a really inexpensive office. I ended up sharing an office and splitting the rent with two other colleagues, and just kind of started from scratch. And I figured as long as I was only answering to myself, I could kind of figure it out as I went.
So how long ago was that you decided to kind of shift your direction and open up your own practice?
8 years ago this month.
Wow. And tell me how that went at the beginning. What were your biggest fears? What were your biggest challenges? And how did you manage them?
My biggest fear was money, and I think that that probably resonates with a lot of people who are considering solo practice. You know, the firm that I was at, which is typical in criminal defense, I didn't have a cushy salary. It was eat what you kill. But I still felt like I had kind of a steady stream of business. You know, when you're at a firm, you know, people are calling, the phones are ringing, people are walking in. Um, I was really nervous about being a lawyer. I wasn't a brand new lawyer, but I was still on the younger side. And were people going to call me? Were people going to hire me? Was I going to have enough money at the end of the month to pay my bills and to have anything to bring home?
So, so what did you do? How did it is scary, wondering where the next case is going to come from. Will I have enough money to pay these bills? How did you handle that?
Initially, I didn't do anything strategic. I made a mistake, which I counsel people now not to do, but I basically took everything that came in the door and charged really low fees and even
That's what we
negotiated.
call door law.
Exactly, exactly. Or I've heard it called rent law, you know, anything to pay the rent. And that is what I did. You know, when I think now about some of the cases that I did for the fees that I charged, my consulting clients, I would tell them, you know, do not do that. That's a huge mistake. But that is what I did in the beginning. And it was because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a strategy. It was really just hit the ground running. I had a couple clients that kind of repeat clients from when I was at the firm, but at that firm, I had been still pretty junior. And so people that were calling there, they weren't really calling for me. They were calling for the partners.
So
I
let
kind of
me
got
let me ask you
overflow.
this. You didn't think that was necessarily, in hindsight, the right way to have done it, to take in any case and to charge fees that were too low. If you were doing it over, or you were advising someone you consult with who's thinking about at the age of 30 or so as a relatively new lawyer starting their own practice, what advice would you give them?
That's such a great question. And that's really the crux of the book that I wrote, Mom's a Lawyer, is basically what I wish I had known or what I wish I had done back then. So I'm very thankful for where I got to today. But if I was starting it all over again, I think I could get here a lot quicker and a lot easier. And I don't think that it takes a huge amount of time or a huge amount of capital to start a firm. I feel really strongly about that. A lot of lawyers are over planners and overly conservative. And a lot of the women that I talk to, that holds them back. You know, they want to have 12 months of expenses in the bank or things like that. I don't think that's necessary. What I do think is really important and helpful is to have a plan and a vision for what you want your practice to be. What types of cases are you best at? What types of cases are going to be profitable for you? Where are those clients? Who are your ideal clients, and where can you find them and market them so that you're not just taking anything, throwing everything at the wall and see what sticks. It's being more strategic. Who is your ideal client? What is your ideal case type? What should you charge for that? What do you need in place in your office to handle those? And then where can you find those clients?
They're great questions to ask. So 8 years ago, you put out your own shingle, shared space with a couple of other colleagues, and started your practice, taking in some work you didn't want to do for prices you wish you hadn't charged.
That's
Eight
about
years
right.
later, Miriam, 8 years later, where are you now? Tell me about Arrington Law and what it's like now.
Sure. So, several years ago, I amicably parted ways with the lawyers that I was working with. Um, I really had a vision to grow this firm, and not all lawyers share that vision, but I really wanted to grow it into a large local presence. What was really important to me is balancing the quality of our representation and our reputation to clients, what we give clients, but also what I offer my team. So I would say probably about 6 years ago, I started being more strategic and developing that vision. I got involved with some legal masterminds. I connected with other women law firm owners who were trying to figure out the same things that I was. And so I slowly grew a firm. Today we're 12. It's all women, women led, and we are very employee friendly and family friendly. We have a lot of operations in place that allow us to be profitable, to serve our clients, to be accessible without overtaxing any one position in the firm. Our legal staff work a 36-hour work week,
Oh,
and we utilize technology. We have virtual support staff, backup phone support, all of these different amazing resources that are available and pretty affordable for small law firms today allow us to be as accessible as clients need without any one of us taking on that full burden. And so, you know, when I was coming up as a criminal defense attorney, it was pretty typical. When cell phones came out, it was very typical to give clients your cell phone number so they could call you on the weekend. And then it became texting and or emailing. We don't do that, not attorneys and not staff. We have technology in place, and like I said, we have backup support staff in place so that we're serving our clients, we're accessible, we're here when people need us, but we all have that balance and have a healthy balance.
setting those boundaries, like not getting text all hours of the night, is so important. So, how did you grow so successfully from yourself to 12 in only 8 years?
It's really when I decided that I needed to learn how to run a business. And, we hear this a lot now, but we don't learn how to run businesses in law school. And myself, like many other lawyers, when I started a practice, I was just a lawyer at that time. I didn't know anything about running a business. And I just thought, well, I'm a lawyer. I can get clients. I'll just open an office. But if you want to grow and build an organization, you need to have the business skills and the business knowledge as well. And today there are many more resources than were even available 7-8 years ago when I was doing this. But I did start really connecting with other business owners, other law firm owners who were interested in doing those things, and we formed masterminds and meetings and kind of grew together, attending conferences, webinars, books. There's just a wealth of information out there for a lawyer who's willing to say, I'm a lawyer, but I want to be a business person. So, what do I need to know to start a business? That includes marketing, hiring, firing, training, building systems. The list goes on.
That's wonderful. I think so many of us come out of law school, we don't even know how to be a lawyer yet. First, we learn to be a lawyer, but law school teaches us nothing about how to own and manage a business. And that's an entirely different skill set. It has nothing to do with how we are trying our criminal case or handling a divorce or whatever it might be. And so I think it's wonderful that you realize to grow and to be successful, you had to become a business person and you taught yourself how to do that. What sets Arrington Law apart? What makes it special to you as the founder of it?
I think there's two things that are really special about the firm that are very important to me. The one is how we treat clients. Customer service is not at the forefront of every law firm. We're not trained on that. I didn't see that really as an example, as an important consideration. I think traditionally, we're kind of taught that we're the experts, and so people are going to come to us and pay us, and we're going to tell them what to do. And and that's what our job is. But we're a service profession. We're serving the community, and so we put a lot of time and resources into customer service at our firm. We have a front of house team and a back of house team. So our front of house team are customer service professionals. They're not paralegals. They're not associate attorneys who are fielding calls. We have customer service people who handle the communication. And then when it's necessary for someone from the legal team to weigh in on an issue, then we do that kind of behind the scenes. And you can see that reflected, and I'm very proud of this. And it's not just me, it's my whole team. In our reviews, people don't just say, oh, they won my case. They say, they treated me so well. I felt so understood.
That's
You know,
so
they always took
important.
my calls. Yeah. And so that is something that sets us apart that I'm very proud of. And the second thing is our team. I'm sure you hear this a lot, Gary, but the human resources aspect of running a business is very, very challenging. And I think it's challenging in any field, but no less in law. And our team has grown. We have some original members. We've had some people who joined the firm at various points and moved on for one reason or another. But the team that we have now, I am really proud of every person. You know, when they're interacting with a client or they're working on a case and it's all under my name, I feel comfortable with what they're doing. And that means a lot to me. And I try to make sure that my treatment of our team is reflected in that. So we have our compensation, our benefits, our leave are very competitive with large firms. And, there's kind of this misconception in the legal field that small firms can't compete. But I think that if we prioritize it, we can. Personal time off is something that's very important to me, and I think that might resonate with you and
Yep.
with your mission.
It is.
Everyone at our firm starts with 5 weeks PTO,
Wow,
and
that's
that doesn't include
amazing.
holidays. And so
That's amazing.
the paid holidays are in addition to that. I think that's important for anybody, but part of my mission as a working mom and supporting other working moms and working parents in the profession is I think we need enough time, we need enough leave that we can accommodate kids, school age kids. And
Right,
so, when you see firms that are offering 2 weeks PTO, that doesn't even cover winter break.
right.
So it really
Miriam,
disadvantages
I hear
parents.
so many folks who tell me, associate lawyers, um, even junior partners, that the atmosphere here is so toxic. People are so rude. They throw things at me. I talked to someone the other day, had 3 straight experiences like that in a row, and it saddens me to hear that. What would your staff say about what it's like to work at Arrington Law?
I'm really happy to say that I think our everyone on our team would say that it's a very positive environment, collaborative. We do have high expectations. It's not, everybody's hanging around the office and drinking coffee all day, but part of that is that everybody's really bought into the mission and knows that their job is important. But we also treat each other with respect. I have heard those stories as well, of temper tantrums and stuff. That absolutely does not happen.
Well, that's wonderful. I think it's amazing that you manage your firm and raise 3 small children too. And I know for many of us, we talk about how hard it is to set boundaries. Tell me what it's like and how you're able to balance the demands of running your practice with 12 employees. I think you have 3 children now, if I remember correctly. How you manage to balance all that out, Miriam, to raise the children, to have a family, to work your cases and manage your firm too.
Well, that's the goal. That's the challenge. I started to really focus on developing a balance with my kids' school schedules when my oldest was starting kindergarten. When kids are little and they're in daycare, daycare hours are usually like 8 to 5, maybe 7:30 to 5:30. So, you deal with sick days and things like that, but basically you can work a normal day. Then kindergarten comes around and it's like 8:30 to 2:30 or, 9 to 3 or something like that. And that's where typical work schedules and school schedules get totally out of whack. So when my oldest started kindergarten, I changed my work hours from 8:30 to 2:30. So we drop them off in the morning and then pick them up in school.
Well, that's amazing. And were you able to make that work okay?
Yeah, we do. I have a couple, secret weapons. I mean, I have a very active and supportive husband.
Good.
And so he generally takes the kids to school so that I can get going on my morning. And then he goes to work. I leave early, pick them up, and then, he comes home at, 5 or 6 o'clock. But it took a couple years to put my firm in place so that I could do that without compromising profitability. So you need to have an organization that can keep your firm running. Now, the same rules don't apply to every practice. Every practice is different. There are certain practice areas or size of firms that maybe can operate on different schedules. We are very client facing and we are very in person. So about 90% of our clients prefer in-person meetings. And so our office has to be open a normal day. So if I were to close the office at 2:30, we wouldn't be able to maintain our profitability. So I leave, but other team members are here. That's a piece of it as well. You need to have an organization in place. That being said, I don't just pop in and out and expect my team to keep their nose to the grindstone. We offer flexibility to team members. We just structure it in a way that the office is always covered. So I have a paralegal whose kids are a little younger than mine. When her daughter started kindergarten, she came to me and said, we're facing this challenge. I love this job. I want to make it work. What can we figure out? And so we sat down together, and she has a similar arrangement where she starts her day early. She comes in at 7:30. Her husband takes the kids to school, and then she also leaves at 2:30 and picks her kids up. We have another parent who works here whose children have a standing appointment one day a week. So she comes in late that day. So it's about raising everybody up. And as long as we're kind of working together as an organization, everybody can have the degrees of flexibility that they need.
I compliment you for doing that. I don't think I run into many firms where the owner, founder, manager is as sensitive to the personal needs of staff as you are. And I know I talk to a lot of women lawyers who are moms, and they find it very, very difficult to manage the practice of law and be a mom as well. What challenges have you heard from your conversations with other women lawyers who are moms? And what are recommendations you have to them for managing the balance between working hard and being a great mom?
This phrase has become a little cliched, but a lot of it really does come down to mom guilt. And like we talked about, the legal profession is really not set up for flexibility. It's not set up for working parents. But I think individually we can change that. There's a lot of messages to lawyers and to lawyer moms in general that we can't. So some things that I hear from women that I work with are, my clients would never go for that. My clients have to be able to call me on the weekends. Or, if they work with other attorneys, my co-counsel, can only talk in the afternoons. And a lot of times it's these external pressures that really can be resolved, pretty easily. So the one section in my book that I get the most positive feedback from about is this section where I have scripts, sample scripts of like what to say to people when they're trying to infringe upon your boundaries. So, what to say when a judge tries to schedule a hearing on a 3 p.m. docket, or what to say when a client asks for a Saturday appointment. I am not suggesting to anybody that they don't need to be accessible and need to balance their career. I mean, there's two pieces to this. There's work and home. But I do think that we can push back a little bit on the traditional boundaries and rework them.
I think people are very, very afraid sometimes of setting those boundaries. They're afraid of saying no, and they don't know how to say no the right way. And so as a result, they say yes to everything. And then they resent the fact that the person who asked them because, well, you should never ask me because I got too much to do already. What are some of those ways that a person can appropriately and professionally set boundaries, whether it's with a managing partner, a judge, or a client?
Well, I think it really is a mindset thing. I think we really need to believe that it is appropriate to do. And, I have this anecdote that I share, but it's actually true. I was on a case with there was a lot of lawyers involved in this case. It was a big civil litigation suit, and so there was us, and there was other plaintiffs' lawyers, and there's other defense attorneys. So scheduling things were always kind of a pain. You're working with like 8 or 9 lawyers' calendars, and then the judge and all this, and so we're going back and forth on this whole email thread of trying to come up with a date, and I'm like scrambling. Okay, well I can get coverage here, and I can move this, and I can move this, and then one of the lawyers just wrote back, and he goes, "Oh, I'm fishing that day." And everybody was like, "Okay." You know, and or, golf or whatever you want to call it. I mean, people have things, and it's really just you don't need to over explain. You don't need to obsess over it. If you don't have any availability for the next 6 months on your calendar, you're probably going to get on people's nerves. That's not very
Yeah.
accessible. But to say I'm not available after 3, but I can do it first thing tomorrow morning at 9, or that date doesn't work for me, but the following Monday does. We need to train ourselves and remind ourselves that that is totally reasonable, and just do it. And I would love to hear your take on that, Gary, because that's really in your wheelhouse. I think helping people establish those boundaries to be healthier.
Yeah, I think we just need to learn that it's okay to say no. That so many times we just say yes, and then we get stuck in our own resentment that he asked me to do something when he knows I'm busy, when I could have said no. And there are right ways to say that. We could help find someone else who could do it. I can't do it, but maybe Jack could. Or I can't do it today, but maybe I can do it within the next 2 weeks. We could sort of reframe the question to show some accommodation without just saying yes. Give me a little bit of time and I'll figure out a way to work it in. Some way to find some time, find some solution. And if it absolutely, we can't. And I think sometimes I find lawyers let themselves be interrupted a lot. And that's another boundary. I'm working hard, and the boss keeps coming in, or the paralegal keeps coming in and wanting to talk. I'm in the midst of a project. And I would just say, it's okay to say, I'm going to be tied up for the next hour and a half working on the Jones matter. Please make sure I'm not interrupted. And when my door's closed, I don't want to be interrupted. And if someone comes in, just say, I can't right now because I'm working on something. That's why my door was closed. But when I'm finished, I'll get back to you. Otherwise, people get interrupted and they say, I can't get anything done. I keep getting interrupted. And folks will respect that because they know it's all about being productive and getting our work done and working together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
You've been start off as a criminal attorney mostly, and now you're a very successful founder of a law firm, entrepreneur. What lessons have you learned about leadership and about business from your journey?
I think really about leadership, it sounds a bit trite, but it really is treating people how you want to be treated. Something that I didn't appreciate when I was an employee is how hard it is to be a boss. When I was the junior person on the block, I remember thinking, "Oh, look at those partners. They're taking a cut off of the top of everything." And it's very stressful. It's a huge responsibility, especially running a law firm. You're responsible for clients' lives, you're responsible for other people's lives and livelihoods. And so I have a greater respect for leadership now. But I also remember and, remind myself of how people want to be treated. And I think a lot of owners lose sight of that. They kind of let the stress and the pressure get to them, and then they lose a little bit of the human touch. As our firm has grown, I have other leaders at the firm, so every single decision, every single problem does not run through me and to me. And I do have a lot of flexibility, like we discussed, that I'm very grateful for. But at the end of the day, I'm still responsible. I'm responsible for the people that work here. I'm responsible for the people that hire us. And I don't lose sight of that. It's a huge honor, but it's a responsibility. And I think it's important for owners to remember that.
As I've heard you share some of your stories today about your firm and how you work with your employees, the two principles that come to mind to me that are really important for leadership are listening and empathy. Too many times, those who run law firms don't listen, they dictate. and they don't really have empathy for the pressures that their employees are under. But when a staff person comes to you and says, "I'm an important appointment for my child once a week," you listen, you don't judge, you don't react. And when she's finished, you come up with a solution together. You're very empathetic to her needs, or same with your employee who started kindergarten. And I think if we're good listeners and we're empathetic, we can create an environment where folks want to work for us.
I think you're exactly right. And the other piece of that I think is good for law firm owners to know, we're all in business. We have profit, we have bottom lines. It's not all touchy-feely, but they do go hand in hand, because having that empathy and having that flexibility means that you attract and retain good talent. And so that paralegal that I mentioned that is on a flexible schedule, she's been with me for 6 years. She's highly trusted. She's very knowledgeable about our business. And we when we're hiring, we attract really high quality candidates because of that reputation. There's a huge cost to firms that are constantly churning people out.
Yeah.
Hiring and onboarding is costly, and so I had a law school professor who used to say you can do well and do good, and that's true in law, and that's also true in running a business.
That's wonderful. I love that you wrote your book, Mom's a Lawyer, How to Start a Firm and Take Control of Your Life. Two questions about it. The first is, why did you write it? And what do you think are some of the most important tips or strategies you have for that lawyer who's thinking about starting her own firm?
So I wrote the book really as just a very natural progression. I had really, and I would say in 2019 is when I really started focusing on learning business, building my business through the journey that we've discussed earlier in this interview. And as my firm started to gain a little bit of traction, actually other female lawyers primarily, were reaching out to me and saying, how did you do this? Or I know that you have young kids. How are you doing all of this? And so it started with, I was having like coffee and lunch or calls with other lawyers, just trying to kind of help them learn from my mistakes, or telling them what I did or what I didn't do, telling them what softwares I used, how I found an office, all those little kinds of things. And over time, it sort of, almost kind of developed into a manuscript. And then a few years ago, I decided to just take all of that work that I had put together and put it into a manuscript, and I submitted it, and it was accepted, and we went through the editing process, and then it was published. So it was really fun process, really
Oh,
exciting
wonderful.
process.
And
Yeah.
what great service to the legal community, that for those who are looking to follow your steps, you've laid out a roadmap so they don't have to make the same mistakes or have the same struggles that you did.
Yeah, and I was very honest in it. I mean, I was honest about some of the things that I wish I had done differently, and it's really, I wrote it in my own voice, really like if I was just giving somebody advice. But I think the biggest takeaway is, that it's very possible, it's very accessible. I really wanted to write a beginner's guide in our field. There are a lot of resources about scaling law firms. There's a lot of great organizations that do coaching and consulting, and conferences on, getting from 6 figures to 7 figures, or, 7 figures to 8 figures. But the people that I talk to tend to be people that either work at a firm or work for an agency, or even they've stepped out of the workplace for a little bit to raise kids, and they kind of want to get back in, but they just don't know how. They don't know that first step. And so this book is really a beginner's guide. It's a quick read. It's, how do you develop that vision? How do you start thinking through what is it going to look like? And my goal is to have people, if they want to open a law firm, they can do it within 90 days or less.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful. Miriam, your insights have been simply amazing, and I thank you for them. I call this podcast The Free Lawyer. And as I hear your journey, I see how you've created your law firm to have the balance to really serve your need to be a great mom to your 3 children, a spouse to your husband, a wonderful lawyer, an employer of 12 people. What does personal freedom mean to you in your life, Miriam?
For me, it meant not having to compromise. I wanted to be, like I said earlier, I love being a lawyer. I feel really proud to be a lawyer. And I love working. I always have. I've worked since I was 11. I had like a standing babysitting job. So I'm a lawyer in my heart. I'm a hard worker, but I also knew that I wanted to be a really active mom, and I didn't want to compromise any of those areas. And then the final piece is I wanted to be happy. I talk about that a little bit in my book. I don't want to be stretched thin, burning the midnight oil, overwhelmed just to kind of get through it all. I wanted to do all the things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to enjoy it along the way. And that was really the driving force behind all of this.
And Miriam, are you happy? Do you have that joy in life, in your practice, in your family that you crave?
I really am. I don't think I would change anything right now. And I know how lucky that makes me.
Everybody, I talk in this podcast about how to create the freedom and the joy that you deserve. And there's so many lawyers, so many of you out there feel you're trapped, you're stuck, there's no solution, and you're not very happy. But Miriam is an example of how you can find freedom and joy and success all wrapped up into one package. And be open-minded. Don't think you're just stuck and there's no solution. There's always a solution out there. And Miriam has laid out one of them here for us today. Miriam, for those of you who want to get your book, Mom's a Lawyer, where can they find it?
It's at a bunch of places. It's at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, a bunch of sites online. And you can also follow me on social media. It's Miriam Airington-Fisher, or Lawyer Like a Mother. If you have any trouble finding any of those materials, you can send me a message. But I want to thank you, Gary, for the amazing work that you do. I love seeing other happy lawyers because I'm such a cheerleader for our profession, and I know that there are challenges that we need to work on. And I'm really, really happy and honored to have met you and see that you're working on improving our profession as well. And thank you for the chance to talk.
Well, thank you, Miriam. I think you're really a shining star in our profession. And many of us can get lessons from how you live your life and how you've created your firm. So thank you so much for your time today. And to all the rest of you who are listening, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free.